Okay, so I think we are live. Um, so it's been quite not that much, but um, a less busier week, you can say. Anyhow, I think now my audio is clear. I don't have a second mobile to verify that, but as discussed in my last video, um, this is going to be a consistent exercise in ongoing and will I will try to for it to be consistent and since my last video got uploaded on YouTube, I was okay. Just a minute. I think the camera needs to just okay. Just a minute. Okay. Okay. Okay, so since my last video, I was thinking that about what what are the possible different types of contents that I can create in basically in Snap while recording, and there is not that much of a research involved, not much or that much of a time involved in producing these live in these videos. So I came up with this idea to of doing a YouTube live more often, and along with the YouTube live, like today, for example, this is the first YouTube live on my YouTube channel. So I was also wondering that what type of content should be published via YouTube online, because things are live, there is no scripting, no nothing. Things are quite raw, quite spontaneous. So it should be, it should be at least consumable and not just a time waste. So I came up with this idea for now to do a YouTube live based on discussion of books. Okay, not scripted because as in the previous book reviews that have been published on my YouTube channel, those have been heavily scripted, heavily edited, and things were not quite spontaneous in those reviews and those videos. So I thought, why not start directly interacting via discussing books, but in a raw format, in a spontaneous format, and I will try to make it more interesting. I will try to make it a bit fast as I watch my last YouTube video. I observed that I was talking quite slow. Okay, and in order to cope with that, I think I don't know if cope is the right word to use in that respect. In order to deal with that problem, I think I will have to be more aware of what I'm talking, what I'm going to talk next, and in order just to keep things rolling. Okay, so just a minute. I don't know who is this. Okay, I'm sorry. I think I will not be able to take comments for now and discuss them because first thing they are mentioned vertically and okay, okay. No, I'm not Cindy. First of all, secondly, you can watch my previous YouTube video. In which I discussed why I'm gonna record this in English. Okay, so you can say it is sort of a personal project and not more uh, towards the you can say it for the amusement of general public, and it is more of a personal nature of project for me. Okay, So, in this YouTube live, I have figured out a book I'm going to discuss. This one is the infamous An Era of Darkness by Dr. Shashi Tharoor. Okay, and uh, about the author, first of all, Dr. Shashi Tharoor is one of my favorite authors, on especially on his detailed works on the Indian history and about this specific book, An Era of Darkness, the British Empire in India. One of the most interesting things about this book is that it is more of a being a history book. It is a historical perspective on the colonialism, British colonialism, but it has a taste of economic history to it as well. So yeah, so I'm going to discuss it, and my you can say that in the upcoming lives as well. I have not you can say determined for now that how how much I'm going to discuss this one, okay, in this YouTube live, but I'm going to discuss the crux of it. And moving forward, I think we can discuss the contents, the timeline that the author has wrote in here, and yeah, that's all. And I think maybe the preface maybe not in this YouTube live, because I just want to test it for now, that how this live goes and what is the potential response of the serious viewers in case of this live, what things I can improve, what things I should focus on in the future. Okay, so starting with that. Okay, so first of all, we will discuss the contents and chapters, the details on which this complete book is based. Okay, so yeah, just to give you a context, I studied this book's one or two chapters, but I could not complete it because of some other commitments, some professional commitments, my jobs, my studies, etc. So I thought, why not start and finish it on the YouTube live? So starting it, okay, from the very start, in the preface, basically the crux of the preface, that it is written in the contents section of this book, is that this idea of writing this specific book, An Era of Darkness, came to author's mind after Dr. Shashi Tharoor delivered, sorry, and he delivered the Oxford speech, the infamous Oxford speech, which if you write Oxford speech Dr. Shashi Tharoor on YouTube, then there will be a speech which you can listen to. It got viral at that time. I think it. I also listened to that. It is almost 4 to 5 years, at least 4 to 5 years old, and you can listen to that to get a perspective of the author's mindset, at how he came up with the idea of writing this book in this much detail. Okay, so and that speech of the author got viral, and people basically asked the author to write a book on this whole subject of the British colonialism, and from a perspective of a local, from the perspective of an Indian. Okay, because if you have an interest in history, there have been various works done by various different authors. For example, there is one author, Dr. William Dalrymple. You must. He currently also lives in India uh, for more than decades, a couple of decades now, I think. The way he wrote the history of Indian subcontinent, and the role of British colonialism in shaping today's subcontinent, both India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. Um, he I read his book, The Last Mughal. Basically, he wrote four books on this topic, and the last one, The Last Mughal, in which was the last part of its four quadruple book series, starting with the anarchy, by the way. Um, Sorry. So, what he wrote in the approach of Dr. William Dalrymple while writing the history on British colonialism, and overall before that even since 1600s when the British came to India, is more, he tried to portray it, he tried to write it from a neutral point of view. Okay, so from the Indians perspective and from the Britishers' perspective as well. Okay, so he quoted from the accounts and the books of both the, you can say, the locals and from the British authors of that time, or yeah. So from the Mughal emperors, what the diaries of the court, etc. He also quoted from that. His research while writing his books is what I have observed is more focused on both sides of the things. But in case of Dr. Shashi Tharoor, especially in the case of this book, what I have got to know, what I have got a sense of this book from his speeches, from his interviews, and this is more of you can say a one-sided approach coming from the Indian side, that how Britons conquered and colonized basically India and exploited its resources over a period of approximately 200 years, and then how uh, the subcontinent, which was you can say had a GDP of 27% of the total of the world's then GDP at that time, came down to a much significantly lower level. Okay, and we will moving on with this live series discuss these things in much more detail. Okay, so in this one, for example, yeah, moving forward, this was the point, that the trigger point for writing this book, as per Dr. Shashi Tharoor, was that particular Oxford speech that I just referred to, and after that he started writing this book. After that, there are total of 8 chapters. Okay, and the first one's name is the looting of India. And the one thing I liked about the contents structure of this book, like if you can see in this, I think it is appearing conversely in the camera, and so I think you may not be able to see that clearly the details. Page is that the things have been described in a crux, you can say. Okay, for example, what I'm trying to communicate here is that in other books that I have read, for example, any other book based on history, usually on the contents page, what is mentioned is that just a chapter's name, okay, and 3 to 4 points regarding that particular chapter, what can you expect to read in that particular chapter and what is the outcome of that chapter. Okay, but in this case, in this book's case, this is much more detailed. And for example, just to quote one, in the chapter number 1, the sub-contents that have been written in the chapter number 1, the looting of India, are the first one is Durant's outrage. Second one is the conquest of India by a corporation, and the East India Company, the deindustrialization of India, destruction of Indian textiles, extractions, taxes, and diamonds, Clive and Plassey, the Nabobs, corruption, revenue collection, and the drain of resources, the permanent settlement, the Indian military contributions to empire, the Nauroji's indictment, the destruction of shipping and shipbuilding, stealing from Indian steel, how India missed the Industrial Revolution, and the last one is the Scots benefit. So these are, you can say, um, some points from this all chapter number one, and from a person who has not any sort of idea about, or who has not read beforehand any history before this book on Indian subcontinent, maybe have it is natural to have no idea about these points, what is mentioned here. But if someone who has, for example, read any other book on this topic, on British colonialism in India, or on the history of Indian subcontinent, he might get an idea. Okay, what are the things, what are the details that have been discussed in this particular chapter? Okay, so like I already said, one of my favorite points that I am starting the YouTube live series, which I plan to proceed with in the future, is why I chose this particular book. Is that the because this book contains a lot of information. I mean, when I last read this book a couple of years back, even when I read only one page, then even after reading only one page, I usually got quite overwhelmed by the information that have been mentioned on only single page. Okay, so it does not usually happen, because usually my reading speed is, you can say, 10 to 15 pages, 20 pages, 25 pages. But in while reading this book, it is so loaded with statistics, with figures, facts and figures, historical statistics and all, and not only anecdotes, not only historical accounts, but with facts and figures as well. Okay, so that's why when you read a single page of this book, you have, you usually think more about the details, that okay, what author just mentioned here, and okay, so this is a particular figure of that particular time which has been calculated in the past 1 to 2 decades, while historically researching about that particular topic by historians. Okay, so moving on, the first chapter's name is The Looting of India. The second chapter's name is Did the British Give India Political Unity? Okay, this is more of a question statement as the name of the chapter. The third chapter's name is Democracy, the Press, the Parliamentary System, and the Rule of Law. And the fourth one is Divide et Impera. The fifth one is The Myth of Enlightened Despotism. And the sixth one is The Remaining Case for Empire. Seventh one is The Imbalance Sheet, a coda. The last chapter's name is The Messy Afterlife of Colonialism. Okay, so um, if I give you a perspective on what to expect while reading this book, is that you can expect that how the British basically destroyed the already established industries in the subcontinent during the Mughal Empire time. For example, the industry of shipbuilding, the industry of textiles, like Bengal was once a gold mine, you can say, for the subcontinent in terms of economy, in terms of business, in terms of trade. And in the various other industries that have been discussed from the scratch, like what were their particular facts and figures before British came in, and what were the particular facts and figures after Britishers left India, uh, after independence, of course. So these are all the points, and the author also discusses the how colonialism has been depicted as something imperial, as something quite high end, quite precious, and how it is not the case. An author tries to makes try to make an argument against that point, against that imperial colonialism mindset. Okay, so all these things. After that, yeah, just before the start of chapter number one and preface, uh, what I really appreciate about the author is that he gave a chronology of principal events mentioned in the book. Okay, so it is basically recommended by the author to read to give a read or to these all events, the list of events that have been just a minute, like you can say here, these are all the list of events year wise mentioned by author. And just before the start of actual text, in order to just to give the reader a perspective. Okay, so for example, anything that comes in the coming chapters about any particular event or any particular personality, then the author should have some you can say a background information of, okay, so what was that particular event that the author is referring to in this particular chapter. Okay, so all that information, all that history of timeline, the chronological timeline of all the that when British came into India, and so on and so forth, how they colonized it one step at a time. This timeline particularly expresses all that in chronological terms. Okay, in a particular arrangement. Okay, so let's start by mentioning the very first event, and I think I can go through all of this. Just a timeline in this particular YouTube live, and let's see how much time we are left with after that. Okay, so the title is a chronology of principal events mentioned in the book. The very first year of the relevant event starts with in the year 1600, and the details mentioned in front of it is, in the year 1600, British Royal Charter forms the East India Company, beginning the process that will lead to the subjugation of India under British rule. Okay, so this is in the year 1600 is basically the year in which East India Company was formed under the British Royal Charter. Okay, and from this comment, it seems that the purpose of this particular this company was already defined. That in accounting and business, we usually say it. What is the nature of this particular business? You know what this company does in order to make a profit. So I think the nature of business of East India Company was to lead to the subjugation of India and exploit its resources under British rule. Okay, so after that there is the year 1613 to 14. British East India Company sets up factory in Mazulipatnam and trading post at Surat under William Hawkins. Okay, so in the year 1613 to 1614, basically the EIC, in short, of East India Company, sets up its first factory in Mazulipatnam. Well, I have to Google that. Where is this particular location? Uh, okay, and the trading post at Surat. Okay, two things were established in the year 1613: a trading post at Surat, the place named Surat, and the first factory of EIC in Mazulipatnam under William Hawkins. Okay, so this was the guy who was in charge on behalf of the Majesty in India. And yeah, Sir Thomas Roe presents his credentials as ambassador of King James I to the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. Okay, so this all started during the Mughal era under Jahangir, and Thomas Roe was the person who was acting as the ambassador of the then King of England, James the First. After that, the next timeline point event is in 1615 till 1618, 3 years. Okay, Mughals grant Britain the right to trade and establish factories. Okay, so this is where Mughals basically gave the license to the Britons to, to have their trade and establish factories and all, etc. In the year 1700, okay, so the next event point author mentioned is 1700, approximately 80 83 to 84 years after the previous event. India under Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb accounts for 27%. Okay, so this is just a fact mentioned by the author, just to give us a perspective of how things were during at at the point of 1700 year. Okay, so the overall GDP of subcontinent India was 27% of the total global economy. Okay, so for example, if in order to just describe it in layman terms, if the GDP of the total world at that moment in 1700 was 100%, okay, so India contributed 27% of that at that point, which was quite huge, to be honest. Okay, so after that, in 1702, Thomas Pitt, governor of Madras, acquires the Pitt diamond, later sold to a regent of France, for 135,000 pounds. Okay, and this is what I was referring to in previously while discussing the contents of this book, was that these sort of figures, like the author mentioned the 135,000 pounds of that time, I mean of 1702. And there is a question which usually originates in the reader's mind, that how they came up with the figure of 135,000 pounds, which is quite normal. Okay, and what I read on this particular point is that uh, this is basically the domain of economic historians. This is a separate field. They usually calculate the inflation and the value of things, the value of money at that point, in that particular at that particular point in history, that what was the actual value of any specific thing back then. Okay, so it is a mathematical process, statistical process. It is quite a specialized thing. So as per this book, the Pitt diamond was of value 135,000 pounds in 1702, acquired and sold it to the regent of France. Okay, so this diamond basically belonged to the Indian soil, and uh, this guy Thomas Pitt, I think the author may discuss its credentials, like who he was later on in the book, but I don't have any idea about that at the moment. I know about this guy as much as you do at the moment. So he sold this diamond to the regent of France, to basically to a higher official of France at that point, from stealing from India. Okay, and the next timeline point is 1739, sacking of uh, Delhi by Persian Nadir Shah and the loot of all its treasures. Okay, so uh, in 1739, basically, a Persian ruler by the name of Nadir Shah attacked the Mughal Empire, and basically, the Mughal Empire was quite weak at that point, and they did not have the resources to protect itself against any external attacks, external enemies, etc. So Nadir Shah was one of the guy who just sacked Delhi and looted all of its precious, you can say, what could be the word for that, collectibles, and the gold, silver, etc. Anything that was the major currency and valuables at that moment, and which made basically the Mughal Empire a one step closer to its destruction. Okay, so it was already quite weak at that point. That's why Nadir Shah was able to attack the Mughal Empire. And but this event of sacking of Delhi by Nadir Shah, and it is mentioned in the historical accounts that Delhi was kept burning for, I mean, for many days, and I mean that was the level of destruction Nadir Shah did at that point, and this made a huge blow. This had a huge blow on the Mughal Empire's economy and the how what everything an empire or any sort of government needs in order to function and to in order to establish its writ. Okay, so the next event is in 1751. Robert Clive, aged 26, then seizes Orkut in modern day Tamil Nadu as French and British fight for control of southern India. Okay, age 26, Argos seizes Orkut in modern day Tamil Nadu as French and British. Okay, so there was an infighting going on because, as you may know, that it is not only the British who ruled India. Oh, okay, you can say the British ruled most of the Indian subcontinent, but there were Portuguese who also came. But there were French who made their colonies in the southern part of the subcontinent, and so on. So it is basically indicating that portion of the history. After that, it is 1757. Okay, so this is the first point of contention between the Mughal Empire and the British. British under Clive defeat Nawab Sirajuddaula to become the rulers of Bengal, the richest province of India. As mentioned previously, the Bengal was one of the most you can say it was the financial hub, one of the financial hubs of India at that point, because it had the shipbuilding industry, it had the textiles industry, it had it was in terms of modern day, it was basically the Karachi, uh, but more peaceful, you can say, of that time, like financial hub basically. So, and the industrial hub. So the British first time conquered, and the first rule, and the point where the British started ruling India was Bengal. Okay, and the place in India where British ruled the most is basically Bengal. Okay, so more you can say 1757, 1857 was the year of War of Independence and or mutiny if you read the English books and British authors' books, and till 1947, the most time that was ruled by British in subcontinent was Bengal, and then later on they kept conquering different parts of the India, and that's how they got control over the whole complete subcontinent. So, 1757, they defeated Nawab Sirajuddaula to become rulers, and yeah, in the year 1765, approximately 8 years after the previous timeline event, weakened Mughal Empire Emperor Shah Alam II issues a Diwani that replaces his own revenue officials in the provinces of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa with the East India Company. Okay, so here, the tax revenue from the Mughal Empire gets into the hands, started going to into the hands of Britishers. Okay, and the tax collection, tax revenue, etc., are the backbone of any empire, any country, any state, so to speak, in terms of modern language. Um, so these three, Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa's tax revenues officials were replaced. The Britishers replaced the Mughals in these particular area for the collection of tax. So for moving on, the tax collection authority got into the Britishers' hand instead of from the Mughals. And after that, 1767, First Anglo-Mysore War begins, in which Hyder Ali of Mysore defeats the combined armies of East India Company, the Marathas, and the Nizam of Hyderabad. Okay, so this is where from the infighting begins and the revolt begins from the Indian side. In the year 1771, Marathas recaptured Delhi. Okay, so uh, I'm yeah. So the Marathas recaptured Delhi from the Mughals, basically, because there was also an infighting going on between Marathas and Mughals in the past history as well, before the Britishers came. So in the year 1772, the birth of Ram Mohan Roy, British established their capital in Calcutta. Okay, so this is the another historical event. The first, the capital, as I mentioned, that the first piece of land from the subcontinent the Britishers captured was the Bengal, and hence, therefore, they established their first capital in Calcutta. And this was, you can say, the official announcement of British rule in India, because once a power establishes its capital, so I mean, a capital contains states, administration, tax authorities, representatives, ambassadors, rulers, officials, government officers, and all. After that, in the year 1773, British East India Company obtains monopoly on the production and sale of opium in Bengal. Okay, and Lord North's Regulating Act passed in Parliament. Warren Hastings appointed as the first Governor General of India, and from here, as you can see, the control, uh, the locus of control is basically shifting from the Mughal side, from the locals, to the British side. Okay. After that, 1773, British India, India production. Yeah. Okay. Um, and yeah, one point along with this is that the opium, you know, in while discussing the history of subcontinent, uh, and even you can say the subcontinent, China, Afghanistan, and all, opium has quite a big role in terms of shaping the geopolitics, the power dynamics of that time period. Like, um, if you read about the opium wars that British imposed on China, because China was also under the rule of British for quite some time. So they basically, you can Google it for the much details that what happened about that. But the subject, which usually goes by the name of the Opium Wars, that were imposed by British Empire on China. Basically, in order to explain it a bit, which I know of, some of the thing, is that the Britishers tried to, impose the opium consumption on the Chinese for their profits and trade and all, etc. And there was a time when Chinese people, the locals and the local leaders, simply revolted that we are not going to consume opium going on moving forward, and that was going to hurt the British profits, the corporation profits, and all, etc. So, Britishers in return imposed a war on on the Chinese in order to force them to trade with them in opium. Okay, so 1773, yeah, that's done. 1781, Okay, so Hyder Ali's son Tipu Sultan defeats British forces. This is the year 1781. And after that, 1784, Pitt the Younger passes the India Act to bring the East India Company under Parliament control. Judge and linguist Sir William Jones founds Calcutta's Royal Asiatic Society. Okay, so Pitt the Younger was basically a ruler of the Great Britain back then, and then they basically officialized the East India Company, and there were some, you can say, issues with the authority of the East India Company in between the British administration. So then I think this guy, the Pitt the Younger, was, I think, the prime minister back then of the Great Britain. So the ultimate solution to that, in that those differences between the empire, because I mean, just to explain you the point in detail, like for example, this is the Great Britain in the Europe, of course, and this is the subcontinent. Okay, so the people and the Great Britain, the government of Great Britain used to appoint their ambassadors on the subcontinent, and then these ambassadors and viceroys would impose the British government's rules and regulations, and how they would say what the rules should be of tax collection and all, and defense, etc., on the subcontinent. But there were some differences on how East India Company should operate, and how the tax revenues and the profits should be distributed, because there were some people who were appointed as viceroys and ambassadors of the Great Britain on the subcontinent, which were basically misusing and were misreporting the things to the British Empire. So in order to you can say to reconcile those differences, um, the British government of then time basically passed an India Act to bring the East India Company under Parliament's control. So directly under Parliament's control, in order to get more control directly over the subcontinent, so that there would be not any discrepancies, any issues in between what they would like to form policies regarding the subcontinent. So, judge and linguist Sir William Jones founds Calcutta's Royal Asiatic Society. Okay, so this is something regarding which may be discussed in detail in that particular chapter when this event arrives. I think, yeah, this is the first page of the chronology of principal events mentioned about the British colonialism, and there are 3 pages more. And this timeline starts from 1600 and ends at 1947, and we have covered it till 1784. So I think this is good, this is good enough for today, and it can take a lot of time to cover this, but I will try to improve how to communicate in more detail, in more simpler terms, and in such a way that you can listen, and you don't have any issue while attending this live stream, while connecting with. Okay, so just a minute. I am going to. And abide by. Okay, so yeah, it's 44 minutes and 40 seconds. Okay, so thank you very much for anyone who's stick till the end, and I will try to keep these things much more concise, much more um, to the point. Okay, and if please let me know if you would like me to discuss any other book in the same manner moving forward. Okay, so we can do multiple books at the same time. And yeah, thank you very much.